Good evening, everyone. And thank you for coming tonight to support the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. My name is Ethan Murphy, and somehow I was persuaded to stand before you tonight and speak. I'd definitely like to thank Andrea and Corey and Landon for putting this event together. They definitely deserve a round of applause. Of course, I'd also like to thank my wonderful wife, Casey, for persuading me to actually talk. So, as a warning, I haven't spoken in front of this many people since a 5th grade school program when I was dressed up like Abraham Lincoln and reciting the Gettysburg Address in front of a gym full of people about 7 years ago. Or 20, but who's counting? If I run out of room, please continue without me. My wife edited my speech and took out all of my jokes, so I thought they were funny, but I'm a structural engineer, so what do I know? So I'm here to talk about type 1 diabetes, and in case you don't know, just some stats because I'm an engineer. According to a 2014 report from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 9.3% of the American population lives with diabetes. So that's 29.1 million people. Of those 29.1 million people, about 1.25 million are type 1 diabetics, and 200,000 of them under the age of 20. 30 to 40,000 people are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes each year, and that's split between adults and children pretty evenly. So that means in 2015, there were 15 to 20,000 adults diagnosed with type 1, and I was one of them. My diagnosis came last year on September 28th at the age of 30. My journey with diabetes really starts with denial, or maybe ignorance, probably a little bit of both. All the symptoms were there, but I just didn't see them. People around me didn't see them. We justified the extreme thirst and the constant need to urinate that I had experienced for 2 years as normal. My wife and I would laugh about the time that I almost wet my pants on an airplane, and while the seatbelt light was on. I probably just drank too much Coke at the airport, I said. The time I had to stop at a gas station 2 miles away from my wife's grandparents' house in order to pee. Small bladders run in the family, I said. My orange water bottle was a constant companion. My attachment to it was probably even a little unhealthy. I once lived in a hotel in West Virginia on the way to a family vacation in North Carolina, and we had to stop on the way back to Illinois so I could pick it up. I would stand in front of a refrigerator and chug 32 ounces of water and refill it and then chug another 32 ounces of water. It didn't seem weird, it was fine. So my experience with type 1 is unique because I was diagnosed as an adult. All the symptoms I experienced, I know now, were obvious and typical for people suffering from T1D, but I didn't know. Let's break it down a little bit. Symptom 1, weight loss, even though you're eating more. Like many people, I ate a whole bunch of fast food and beer in college and shortly after. And so I put on weight and was at about 225 pounds. I decided to make some lifestyle changes and lost 40 pounds through diet and exercise before getting married. And after that weight loss, even though I had stopped working out, I was slowly losing weight again. I wasn't even trying, but it just seemed normal. I was dropping from 185 pounds down to 165, down to 150, but I wasn't really concerned about it. Or in reality, I guess I kind of was. I started Googling unexplained weight loss, and I narrowed my choices on WebMD down to 3: cancer, diabetes, and thyroid disorders. Cancer was just way too much to think about, so I kind of threw that one out the window. And diabetes, I'm too young, and I'm relatively healthy, so it can't possibly be that. And it didn't run in my family. So that left thyroid disorders, and they run on my mom's side. So I finally broke down and went for a physical in 2014 and with a blood test to check my thyroid function, and came back negative. I thought I was in the clear. Our friends would comment about how much I could eat and still not gain weight. I was eating over 3,000 calories a day with tons of sweets and junk food, and still the number of them on the scale just kept dropping from 150 down to 145 pounds. Casey was pressuring me to go to the doctor, and I told her that if I dropped below 135 pounds, I'd go. She threatened to move me in with the dog if I dropped below a size 28 pants, and joked she was going to have to buy my clothes at Baby Gap. So I maintained my brave, which Casey calls a stubborn, front, and I was still concerned and kept searching on WebMD. Sorry. I just refused to believe these symptoms. I told myself I didn't have diabetes. And then the scale hit 135 pounds, so I made that appointment. By the time that appointment rolled around in September of last year, I was down to 133 pounds, which was 90 pounds less than my heaviest weight. I had a new doctor by this time, and I liked him a lot, or her a lot better than the doctor had done the last physical. I laid out all the symptoms I had, and they did a blood test, and my doctor seemed concerned. It could be cancer, she said. She didn't say anything about diabetes. So I went home that night, and I ate leftover pasta that my wife had made. She had just gotten home from a massage. I was working on a big project for work at the dining room table, and had half a bowl of chocolate jello for dessert. When my doctor called me at 9:30 and said, your blood results are back, and you need to go to the emergency room right now. She said that my blood sugar was around 600, and that they needed to verify those results. Is that bad? I asked. And she said, well, yes, you could go into a coma at any point. Oh, okay, I said. I guess I'll go to the ER then. And I said those words, but in my mind I was thinking, maybe I'll just go see the doctor tomorrow. It'll be fine. No big deal. Of course, my wife, by this time, had come to sit on the couch, and she was looking concerned, so I told her about the conversation. She said we were going right then, and I didn't argue too loudly, and I let her drive. My diagnosis with type 1 diabetes came in at 11:30 at night. The first two blood sugar readings came back as high, HI. They took more blood. The results, we think you might be diabetic, so we're going to hook you up to an IV because you're also dehydrated. I said, no, this can't be right. You know, I drink so much water, nearly a gallon of water a day. There's no way I'm dehydrated. I'm not diabetic. The tests are probably just wrong. I've never had an IV before. I can even watch due to my deathly fear of needles. My mom always said that she didn't have to worry about me getting a tattoo or a piercing because I couldn't stand the thought of a needle touching my skin, which is kind of ironic now. So let me paint you a picture of my diagnosis. There I am, sitting on a gurney, avoiding looking at the nurse who's wiping blood off my entire left forearm, saying, oh my, that's a lot of blood. And has anyone ever told you that you're a bleeder? When a doctor who looked like someone I probably played beer pong with in college comes in and says, how long have you had type 1 diabetes?
Spoiler alert, he didn't know.
So that's how I found out. And I finally knew what was wrong, and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't really process what it meant for weeks afterwards, and probably still don't. I was in denial, and I struggled at first trying to get enough blood to test my sugar, and would get frustrated. It would take myself 10 minutes to give myself a shot. My first real breakdown came in January, because I had to switch from pens to syringes due to some insurance issues. And I'd used syringes in the hospital, but you know, I didn't like them. And I was so used to the pens that I had just lost it one morning and trying to give myself a shot. And Casey hugged me while I cried. I got used to the syringes eventually, but now I'm back on the pens again. Of course, there are a few perks to diabetes. My fear of needles is gone. Even contemplated getting a tattoo now, don't tell my mom. I choose a rocky fanny pack to carry my supplies in. And I also wear a cool orange medical ID, which you probably can't see. I started taking strolls to the diabetes aisle to see if they have anything new. And if you try hard enough, you can actually pretend that glucose tabs are as good as Smarties, which I will never have again. And if you've never had the orange ones from Kroger, they're the best. You start to savor the sweets more. Last week, I celebrated my 1-year diet-versary with a bottle of Mountain Dew and 3 extra units of insulin. So, do I follow all the rules? Of course not. The doctors in the hospital told me to drink light beer. I laughed because you can pry my favorite IPA out of my cold dead hands. I was told to give up cigars, and I still maintain my 2 cigar a week habit since it's stress relief and also lowers my blood sugar. I do forget to take insulin from time to time, and I blame those times that I'm acting like a jerk on low blood sugar. Works perfectly. Do I exercise like I'm supposed to? No. It's the first thing to go out the window when I'm busy. And now that I've put on 40 pounds after my diagnosis, my wife doesn't have to shop at Baby Gap anymore. In all seriousness, though, it's a constant everyday struggle. You know, insurance paperwork is much more of a hassle when you actually are sick. And you know, I always have to worry, do I have enough insulin to get me through a vacation? Making trips to multiple pharmacies after losing my test kit, or forgetting to pack pen needles while away for a weekend. You know, I had constant pain in my legs and tingling in my feet as my blood sugars were brought down to normal levels. You know, trying to take glucose readings under tables at restaurants and hoping that no one is watching. Taking insulin in restaurant bathrooms and having people ask, "What are you doing?" You start hearing every diabetes commercial on TV, and then you realize that they're all for type 2 diabetics. And there's the realization I can't eat 3 donuts in a sitting anymore. And having everyone you know tell you about someone they knew with diabetes that was either cured through some website or worse, dealt with amputations. You know, I deal with low blood sugars periodically. Hypoglycemia is one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. And the night times are the worst. I wake up from a dead sleep at 3 a.m., covered in sweat, and I stumble to the bathroom in the dark trying to find my meter. And I don't want my wife to worry, so I don't even wake her up. I fumble trying to get a test strip out of the tube because my hands are shaking so badly. And I can barely see because I'm so lightheaded and seeing some white spots in my vision as if I'm staring at bright lights. If I wake up at night, you know, my sugar's going to be in the 40s or the 50s, and which is lower than my golf score. So I stumble out to the kitchen and I go to town on the carbs and I wait out the low. And I'm fortunate because I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'm able to take care of myself. So now imagine that you're a child, or the parents of a child who has type 1 diabetes. And imagine waking up to test that child's blood sugar every 2 hours until they're old enough and responsible enough to manage their own sugars. My wife and I don't have kids yet, and I can't even imagine the fear of missing my child's blood test and waking up not knowing if my child could be in a coma or worse. You know, the children and their parents that deal with this disease are really my heroes. And the scary thing is that diabetes diagnoses aren't for other eyes. And there's a statistic that says 1/3 of all Americans will have diabetes by 2050. It's an epidemic, and the only way to stop it is by donating charities such as JDRF that promote diabetes research. And if you haven't heard the recent news, the FDA just recently approved an artificial pancreas, which is a big deal. Yeah. You know, JDRF funding goes towards better insulin, better education about diabetes, and support for those of us that deal with this, and most importantly, research for a cure. It used to be a death sentence, and it's not anymore. You can lead very normal, if somewhat complicated lives now. And so, that's all I got. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the year.